Hello, friendly buds. This is your catalyst, Richard, one of 3.5 Inspiral catalysts. Um, we did a bit of a review yesterday, the last few months, to see how we've been going and to give sort of a position on where we might go next. So I wanted to give you a video update to go with the text update for those who prefer a bit of facial activity over reading all the time. So the quick version. We've started a project on ventures. Andre Bate has come in as a sort of proto catalyst, and he's looking at articulating the value exchange and the expectations for ventures in the foundation. And the first output of that is going to be around an event called the Venture Heartbeat, which is a kind of skill sharing meeting for people who are in ventures or people who have an idea that they might like to turn into a venture over time. So stay tuned for news on that. Another thing that the Catalyst have been up to is testing out this idea that's come out. We're calling it contributor cohorts. So the idea that if you bring a bunch of new people together into a group, they might have a better experience of arriving and more of a sort of shared identity and a little miniature learning community. Joshua's leading that. You can find out more on Lumio. A lot of what we've been doing has been public-facing communication stuff. So we helped to relaunch Inspiral.com, which is looking pretty rad. We reformatted and published the Inspiral Handbook, which in the last few months has had 7,500 unique visitors. So there's obviously a demand for that kind of content. And we keep stimulating the production of new blog posts on Inspiral Tales, which has had 15,000 views in the last 3 months. So that's sustained attention, and Joshua's just started a group of people to look after the social media, so we've got much more activity happening on our Facebook and Twitter, and if you're interested in contributing to that, get in touch with Josh. Another part of the work that Catalyst do is working with ops team to make sure all of our systems are running smoothly. So there was some work around contributor onboarding and also the processes and the documentation around what a member hiatus is. So we've got this thing called hiatus where members can take a little breather from being a member without completely giving it up. So we've just got a bit more clarity on that. There's been some ongoing work. Susan's really been leading on the bucket reporting and the processes for our co-budget buckets. New processes, a bit more clarity, a bit more transparency about where the funds are coming from and where they're going. Another thing we do is every month we review the comments from contributors that have decided to stick around or contributors that have decided to leave us, and we pay attention to how many of people are in each category, and we also pay attention to what are the themes coming out. So it's helping us to get a picture of where the areas of improvement are in the network. And we also do stuff like reminding people of their agreements. So if you're in a venture, you're supposed to submit a quarterly update, let everyone know what you're up to every 3 months. So we've just prompted that. There's a Lumio thread about that. So if you're in a venture and you haven't submitted an update in the last few days, now's time to do it. Another major project, this is the one that I had most of my attention, was this stewardship working group. So we had a retreat, and then out of that we formed a small working group who wanted to take this big nebulous mass of ideas about stewardship as a support system and turn it into a practical process with an agreement around it. So we've facilitated the adoption of a new agreement. We've implemented the first round, so now all of the active members have stewards. It's been really positive reception. It's been really encouraging, hearing comments like, I feel like I'm really getting something back from Inspiral instead of just giving, so that was really awesome to hear. So next up, it's just about extending this further out into the network. So if you're interested in joining the stewardship working group, you can help design what the next round looks like. So how we include many more people beyond just the couple of dozen members that are involved at the moment. And that pattern of a stewardship forming with a couple of catalysts at the centre, and then inviting further people in after the sort of setup round, and then the catalyst stepping back. I think that's going to be an exemplar of what working groups look like. So that's a big theme looking into the future. There's this thing called working groups. So they've just been emerging without any really clear directive, but they're emerging all over the place. So there was the stewardship working group. There's just started the scale working group, which is looking at what are the different ways that Enspiral can grow without going bad. There's just in formation the brand working group, which we expect will host some kind of process to develop an agreement about how we use the Enspiral brand. And then there's the conflict working group, which has been making great progress, and there's an update on Lumio about our approach to conflict resolution and mediation. And in the last 3 months, the ambassadors group has sort of reframed into a working group, just like all the others. And so what we're proposing next up is to reframe the catalysts and probably the board as well as just another working group amongst many other working groups. And in the process, probably update the agreements for the Catalyst and the board as well to minimise the hard powers that we hold. So at the moment, for instance, Catalyst have a special role to play in co-budget buckets, but we haven't actually exercised that power, and we don't want to. So we're going to host a discussion about amending that agreement to make us just more like a working group like anyone else, and less like a special snowflake. We just had a members meeting. There'll be notes reported out about that shortly, but one of the outcomes of that members meeting was the establishment of a new working group, which is looking at how financial contributions to the foundation work. So there's going to be lots of that sort of stuff coming through. And we expect over the next couple of months to really clearly articulate standard operating procedures for a working group. So how do you report to the network? What are you doing? How do people join? What's the criteria for membership? How do we do project management? So a lot of those working groups are now starting to use the improvements board. So that's a public, transparent task tracking system. And in future, that could really become a go-to place for anyone who spots a problem that they think could be resolved, or anyone that's got energy to contribute something. We sort of have a vision of the improvements.enspiral.com board evolving into a real destination. So perhaps before the end of the year, we might see a working groups agreement, just to really name exactly what they are and what they're for, and how you join them and so on. Something that we've learned about our process as a team, we've just had a really delightful time working together as a team, and having Andre come in as a fourth person. He's like helping without taking on too much. He's not officially a catalyst. He's just been sort of chipping in where he can. He's really super enjoyed the connection, and we've really enjoyed having an extra person there to share the load with. All of his focus is really around venture stuff, and we might see him formalize his status as a catalyst over the next few months as well. One of the other themes that has just been really clear, like a lesson for us about our process, is how fundamental our rhythm is. So we operate on these 2-week sprints. Sprint 15 starts on Monday the 31st of October. They're on for 2 weeks, and we have a meeting at the start, in the middle, and at the end. And we've learnt to just maintain those rhythms absolutely strictly, even if one of us can't be there. And it means that we're got that reliable connection, and we don't spend a lot of time kind of rescheduling meetings and that. So that's been really critical to our sense of coherence as a team and our sense of progress. Personally, I'm on a Catalyst trial, so Lumio has been sponsoring me to work for a day a week, and Lumio has to decide whether they want to sponsor me again for the next 3 months, the next 6 months. I'm going to try and persuade them to do so, but I would say that it's been really easy for me to go overtime than beyond my 1 day a week commitment, so it would be easier for me to convince Lumio to pay for my time if there were more people stepping in to take on some of this Catalyst work, because then I could comfortably stay within my 1 day a week commitment. Susan has been having a great time too, and she's super committed. She's intending to keep on working as a Catalyst through 2017, and she's been self-funding. Originally she came on with sponsorship, but now she's self-funding for a day a week, which she says feels okay, but it's very easy to go overtime as well. So she'd be happy to work more if there was funding available. Another process thing, a couple of weeks ago we had Bart, who's one of the members. He came to join one of our meetings, and it was really great just to have an extra person there, like an observer. He had some really useful insights about how we're working and what our blind spots might be, and I think that's really informed some of the work that we're going to do next quarter. So we welcome observers in the meeting. So if you want to come along, just drop us a note in the Catalyst channel on Slack, and we'll tell you when's a good time to come in. There's occasionally we have to deal with some confidential information, but most of the time it's really appropriate for anyone to join in. You might get a taste for what the Catalyst work is like, and you might want to pick some of it up. One thing that we've noticed is that we are really leaning on each other for support as a group, as opposed to leaning on our Catalyst stewards, which are formally part of the agreement is that all of us Catalysts have a bunch of stewards that are there for support, and they've been really great, but we've just noticed that in practical terms we're leaning on the Catalysts more than the stewards, and so we're expecting to update the Catalyst agreement about that, just to clarify, to get rid of any unnecessary requirements and just make it really easy for anyone to be a Catalyst. So good thing to learn. It's just the Refactor generated all these agreements, and now that we've put them in practice, I think we're just going to tune them all a little bit. And in addition to the working groups, which is a big theme for next quarter, I think the other big theme is about strategic direction. So up until now, the Catalysts have really been focused on putting out fires and fixing things and getting systems operational and that sort of thing. But now we're graduating into a bit more generative open territory where we get to pick and choose where to spend our energy. And up to date, we've been doing that in a really, we want to be guided by the network. We don't want to operate in a top-down fashion. We want to take our strategic priorities just based on what the network needs. And there's a question about how do we listen to the network? Whether that's like something very formal like a survey or something a bit more informal like the conversations I've been having with, I think I've talked to about 30 or 40 different members in the last 2 weeks, just hearing, what do they think is important, and developing that into a coherent picture or a coherent set of priorities. And then, of course, there's the other question of what role has the board got to play. They've got a particular insight and a particular perspective on the network, as do the Catalyst and as does everyone else. And so how do we shape those together into something that is coherent enough to allow the Catalyst to say, we're focused on this right now and we're not doing that. I feel like that's a lot of information, and that's more than enough for me. It's been really a huge pleasure to work here, and I'm personally having a total blast. The team's awesome, and I'm really excited about some more people joining in. So if you're interested, drop me a line, and I'll happily show you a bit more detail about what it's like to be on this super fun, cool, fun team. Now, oh yeah, before I go, I should have introduced, this is Bob. He's a good friend of mine. Okay, see ya.